City of Norwich railway station and ready for aviation route 2. The time is just gone 10:30. The first couple of kilometres of this route are identical to aviation route 1. So you're going to take in points of interest 1 and 2, but then you're going to very shortly turn left and route up towards Old Catton.
The first point of interest is at about 1.5 kilometres, and it's a memorial plaque remembering 2 aircraft crashes from World War II, a Bristol Beaufighter and a Hampton bomber. Unfortunately, 5 aircrew lost their lives here. I'm not stopping in this video, so for more details check out video 1. Then I ride across Mousehold Heath for another kilometre to the Maurice Rees Close, a street named after a Belgian Spitfire pilot who crashed his aircraft after running into trouble after a maritime patrol. No one really knows exactly why he crashed, but the young pilot is remembered with a brass plaque. Then it was on to Old Catton.
The route is going to bring you up towards Catton Park. Just going to stop briefly here. This is point of interest number 3. It's Old Catton. Behind me is Catton Park. Just up there on the left is Church Street. And in front of me is the War Memorial. This is the location of 2 crashes, both involving the B-24 Liberator bomber. One of them was based up at Rackheath, and the other one was based here at St Faith's, which is now the International Airport at Norwich. I won't go into too much more detail here. Check that out on video 1. However, what I will point out is this house on the corner, the White House. This received a direct hit by the second B-24, a dog's life, and that crashed directly into that corner house there, killing all crew on board.
I've chosen some quiet roads heading north, skirting the village Spixworth and heading to Frettingham, to a privately owned aviation museum and a B-24 crash site memorialised in the Frettingham Village Hall.
From here on in, most of the roads are pretty rural. You're away from the traffic, but watch out for the odd tractor suddenly appearing from out of a field or a farm. Right, so I'm approaching Frettingham. Just inside this farm here, it's the new farm Aviation Heritage Group. I think by the looks of that sign, I'm a little bit early, like by 2 weeks. It's not opening until the 13th. Let's go in and have a quick look though. This is the building that we can go into. Not open at the moment, unfortunately, but all things aviation. Even a little biplane wind vane. That's a bit disappointing that that's closed today, but hopefully I'll come back in a couple of weeks and go and take a look. This is the village of Frettingham. It's more or less a hamlet actually. It's only a collection of a few houses and a pub. The B-24 bomber that crashed here was called Belle of Boston. The Belle of Boston is believed to have crash landed approximately in that field just over there.
The Belle of Boston was stationed at St Faith's, now Norwich Airport. The crash report reads that on May the 8th, 1944, at 06:16 hours, the pilot made a normal takeoff from runway 05 into the northeast and seemed to be under control and flying normally when last observed. Shortly after this, a column of black smoke was observed about 2.5 miles away from the field. Crash trucks and ambulances were immediately dispatched to the scene of the crash. Staff Sergeant Cassidy, only slightly injured, and one of the 3 survivors, stated upon questioning that the pilot lost an engine shortly after takeoff, and then it caught fire when it started operating again. Lieutenant Kingsley, the pilot, was unable to keep the plane in the air and it mushed along, clipping the treetops until the right wing of the ship hit a large tree and was sheared off. Immediately after this, the plane crashed and burnt. The ship was completely destroyed, with the loss of 6 lives. Information about this fatal crash can be found at the village hall, where there is a plaque and some aircraft debris preserved in a mini exhibit. The route continues through the village of Buxton and towards Oxnead for the next point of interest, which is a reinforced defensive structure immediately adjacent to a bridge over the River Bure.
Here's an interesting little pillbox. It's our Oxnead, and I have absolutely no idea why it might be here. You know, normally these pillboxes are in strategic locations, perhaps cliff tops or on beaches, but this one is an absolute mystery to me. The only thing around here are fields and a tiny little stream. Anyway, let's have a quick look inside. Looks like some kind of drug den in here. So I guess it's looking across that bridge where that van's coming over and the girls with the horses, but not particularly strategic. You can see the slots each side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right, that's enough of that.
It was nice to get some fresh air after the musty damp inside of the pillbox. By the way, this is a great spot to launch a canoe and explore this part of the River Bure. A route recap then. From Old Catton it's through Frettingham, Buxton, over the bridge at Oxnead and past Hainford towards South Reps. I love riding my bike because of the freedom I experience and the ability to explore the more minor roads of Norfolk. At this pace, I enjoy a closer connection to the environment. Not only is it a great way to see the countryside, I can go further than a walk or a run in the same time. Generally, I ride between 25 and 28 kilometers per hour, which means that these aviation route rides I do in about 4 hours. Cycling is also a great low-impact exercise, in contrast to, say, running. Not only that, my Garmin bike computer told me that I was averaging about 150 watts and I had burnt 2,400 calories doing this ride alone, which is approximately 600 calories per hour. So it's a really great way to keep fit and burn fat. Okay, back to the route, where I ride through a part of Norfolk known as the Poppy Lands. This part of Norfolk has the highest density of flint-built churches in the world, and most villages have one. Up towards Colby, the roads are straight and tree-lined. There was hardly any traffic. I really got a sense of a sleepy, untouched historical way of life that I just love. And a feeling of quintessentially East Anglian English landscape, even with the odd telephone box thrown in.
We're pretty fortunate here in Norfolk that we haven't had any major battles or wars, not for at least hundreds of years. Even if you go back to the Civil War, there weren't any battles associated with that here. So you have to go back to 1381 and the Peasants' Revolt in order to find the last proper battle that was fought on the land around here. And that was actually commemorated by a number of stumps. They were actually bigger pillars at the time to commemorate the sacrifice and the battles of that time. And they've been eroded, but you can see here, this is the third of the three. Originally, these were big sort of needles with, I think there was a cross on top, but most of them have been weathered and vandalised over the centuries. I believe that these are actually considered some of the earliest war memorials ever built.
Through the fields, the route heads towards South Reps.
Riding into South Reps, beautiful church. St James's Church.
From South Reps, you can nearly smell the sea at Cromer. Or was that just the fish and chips where I was hoping to get my lunch?
Arriving in sunny Cromer. Time to try and find a cafe. I've got one in mind, particularly appropriate for today's weather. It's the Blue Sky Cafe up on the top of the cliff, just coming up to 44 kilometres. Oh dear, the cafe's closed. I'm not having much luck today with opening times. Oh well, continue with the route. Riding into Sheringham, but first of all, I've got to get across the railway line. That's the line back to Norwich. Sheringham station is just a little way on. So it's always nice to know that you've got a bailout option on this route. Just jump on the train, straight back to Norwich and back to your car. A little bit of gravel thrown in there for you. Just over there is the Beeston Bump. Beeston Bump is a piece of high ground which is left over from the Ice Age. I think they call it a terminal moraine.
From this point, the North Norfolk coastline is known as the Deep History Coast, mainly due to the geology which has produced some incredible fossils. Sheringham is a thriving coastal market town set in an area of outstanding natural beauty. Sheringham was a fishing port. The fishing industry was at its peak in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, as the coming of the railways made it possible for fish to be transported more efficiently to market.
So I've ridden into Sheringham, and this is a really pretty little town. And I can't imagine for any reason at all why anybody might want to target this for a bombing raid, but that's exactly what the Germans did in World War I with the Zeppelin. So the very first bomb that ever dropped was on that street there in 1915.
A Zeppelin was a type of rigid airship named after the German inventor Ferdinand von Zeppelin. A lot of Zeppelins were commissioned by the German Kriegsmarine or War Navy. The mission over Sheringham in 1915 was crewed by Captain Lieutenant Jose Freiherr Teuch von Butler Brandenfels. A bit of a mouthful. Anyway, he was a baron in the German Navy. The British media used propaganda targeting the Zeppelin attacks and called them baby killers, and the national newspapers such as the Daily Mail offered Zeppelin funds for the unfortunate victims of Zeppelin air raids.
Well, there's your blue plaque, folks. That is commemorating the first ever bomb dropped on Britain in World War I from a German Zeppelin. The GPS is telling me that I've done 50 kilometres, and this is probably a more suitable place to stop and get my refreshments. It looks a lot more busy, so perhaps let's go and try that cafe over there.
Mushrooms on toast.
The route left South Reps and dropped down into Cromer and along the coast, past the Beeston Bump towards Sheringham for lunch, then westward towards Weybourne. Weybourne is surrounded by arable fields, woodland and heathland. There is a shingle beach and a railway station on the North Norfolk Heritage Line located just outside the village. There is also a picturesque windmill situated on the east of the village, while I headed through the village to the western side, up Fox Hill, to the Muckleborough Collection.
It's a short spin along the Norfolk coast from Sheringham to Weybourne, and here the Muckleborough Collection. Muckleborough Collection is the largest privately owned military museum in the country, and it's on the site of an old Royal Artillery base. There used to be a coastal and air defence battery positioned here, and there are still the remains of the gun emplacements. This beast is a ZSU-23-4, and that is a Soviet-produced air defence gun.
The ZS-23-4 Shelka is a lightly armoured Soviet self-propelled, radar-guided anti-aircraft weapon system developed in the late 1950s. The ZSU-23-4 is armed with 4 23mm autocannons.
Okay folks, so this is as far north and west as this route takes us. We're now going to head south through a number of old airfields before getting back to Norwich.
From Muckleborough down Fox Hill and up over the bridge at the rail station, where the route passes not one but 3 World War II airfields. The first, the grass aerodrome at RAF Matlaska, then south through Itteringham to RAF Alton Street, and finally through Corston to what was RAF Swannington.
Up Asthma Hill, just outside the Kelling Heath caravan site.
Asthma Hill is the unofficial Strava segment name to this short but punchy hill climb that's definitely going to test your legs and lungs. At the top of the hill, another pillbox can be seen.
Short and sharp, but anyway, I must be a little bit more powerful than the bike can take, because unfortunately I've just popped a spoke. It doesn't look like the wheel is too buckled, hasn't completely crisped up, but it is out of shape, rubbing on the brakes slightly, so I'm going to have to take it a little bit careful for the 50 kilometres back to Norwich.
Across open farmland, it's quite difficult to spot the old aerodrome at Matlaska, but keep your eyes peeled for the northern concrete taxiway, which is still in existence at the northern end of the old airfield. RAF Matlaska was used by Typhoon ground attack aircraft. It was Britain's equivalent to the German Stuka dive bomber. The taxiway originally had some maintenance and storage buildings long since removed. The airfield is now returned to farming use, but with a bit of imagination, I pictured a Typhoon sitting on the apron, ready for its next mission.
This is RAF Alton Street, the northern side. There's a war memorial just down here to those that served at this air station. We're going to ride round the edge of this. I think this is a part of the old perimeter track. And to the right there was where the airfield was, and we might be able to see some of the runways and hard standings.
RAF Alton Street was a typical 3-runway construction with associated perimeter taxiways and dispersal areas used by British bomber planes. The main aircraft types used were the twin-engine medium-light bomber named the Blenheim. Surprisingly, most of the concrete constructions remain and now provide storage for machines and the accommodation of chicken and turkey farm units, which are ubiquitous in the Norfolk landscape. To the east of the airfield is the village high street, unchanged for a century, which I guess would have had great views over the activities at the airfield in its heyday. Towards the south of the village is a duck pond, where you can also see a great example of a blister hanger next to a couple of grain storage silos. Then it was on to the last airfield, RAF Swannington, where you can see the remains of some hard standings, but the runways have been removed. The de Havilland Mosquito was based here. Predominantly made of a light construction including wood, the Mosquito had the reputation of a successful and very fast Pathfinder bomber capability. Riding through the airfield, you can still see several old military buildings nestled away in the woods. The route concludes with a straightforward recovery through Drayton into Norwich, but just in time for the last 2 points of interest, which are located on the edge of the city. I'm back at Norwich on the Boundary Road, and these are the last 2 points of interest. The first is this little plaque here, which says this stone is in the memory of Flight Lieutenant Cameron of the Royal Canadian Air Force, a pilot, and Sergeant Sheridan of the Royal Australian Air Force, a navigator, who lost their lives when their Hampden bomber crashed nearby on the 31st of May 1942. Just around the corner there's another crash site. So this is the last of the points of interest. It's Spink Road. Just down here is the last memorial, little plaque to a bomber that crashed in this street. Right, I found it. It's in somebody's private garden, just on the wall there. On January 14th, 1945, a Consolidated Liberator B-24 bomber named Lassie Come Home and its crew of 9 had been one of 28 aircraft formation to leave Horsham St Faith that day, and their mission was to bomb and destroy the Hermann Göring works at Halle in Germany. During the mission, the number 1 engine was destroyed with enemy flak. The aircraft was still flying with its remaining 3 engines, and it limped back to England. During final preparations to land at St Faith's, that the engine number 2 cut out completely. With both engines on the port wing suddenly out of action, the force of the 2 remaining engines on the opposite wing caused the plane to roll over in an instant, putting the crippled bomber into an uncontrollable and inverted dive at low altitude with no hope of recovery. The plane crashed, killing all 9 on board, and even more tragically 2 children in their home. All those that were lost that night are remembered on the plaque. On that rather sombre note, the ride meanders through Norwich, back to the rail station. There you go, folks, back at Norwich City Station. The time is 10 to 6. I've done 101 kilometres. All the details up here, and that's the end of Aviation Route 2.